climbers, and welcome to Climbing Mount CMMC. Back to the basics.
Good job.
Where is it going? Look, sky.
Hello, climbers, and welcome back to another episode of Climbing Mount CMMC, the podcast. My name is Kaleigh Floyd, and I am from the future. This is me in the future. I'm popping in to let you know that this is part 2 of a 2-parter episode. Yes, we talked for too long about the RFI and our response to the DoD CIO. So if you did not listen to Tuesday's episode, make sure to go back to our most recent episode before this, check that one out, and then come back to this episode, which is part 2. We hope you guys enjoy today's episode and tune in. See ya. Let's talk about the recommendations or the considerations of improvement that we gave. So we gave not 5, 4. We said, no, we don't need 5. We just need 4. I'll go out of order because I already kind of promoted it, but the reevaluation of the FIPS validation requirement. Yeah. So do you want to share your perspective on that?
Yeah. Just so you guys may or may not know, FIPS is not a type of encryption. FIPS is just a validation of an encryption. Mm-hmm. And like firewalls and other systems sometimes will have the capability of doing FIPS, but they won't even turn it on. And the reason why they won't turn it on is FIPS is a module or a system that has been sent to NIST for them to evaluate to make sure that the encryption is functioning the way it's supposed to, that it's not sending data to China, that it's not leaking information, that the encryption is not actually functioning or accurate, that it can be more easily cracked based on if they're using, AES 256 or whatever it is that they have. So once they look at that and they're like, yes, this is a good encryption. It could be AES 256, but maybe by the time they've gone through this, it's like 2 or 3 years after they've gone through the validation process of submitting it. That organization may have created other modules that are much more sophisticated that might be able to encrypt it faster. Because think about it, if you have a VPN and you're throwing data through it, the more accurate you can compress that and encrypt it, the more you can move through that system, that hardware system. And so they're constantly looking at it and thinking about ways they can improve this so they can get the most bang for their buck out of these systems, because you're really trying to burn the candle from multiple ends. And when you do that, that requires innovation in these types of encryption standards for you to be able to do that, because new systems are coming out, and the FIPS validation process is anything but fast and efficient. So it really slows down and it's costly. So the vendors just don't do it. So then what ends up happening is you have all these vendors you can use, and then you have this small sample of vendors that actually have FIPS validated modules. And even those modules aren't going to perform as well as the ones over here because they're older. It's just super frustrating. So it takes a lot of the performance and capabilities off the table for hardware vendors and other systems and software packages and other things. So that's why you'll hear a lot of the software vendors say it's FIPS compliant, which is not the same thing as validated. Validated, you pass. Compliant, you fail. Right? If you walk in and you're like, hey, I'm using this VPN that's FIPS compliant. Here's on my website. See, it says it's compliant. They're like, I'm going to, the NIST validation site. I don't see the FIPS number, that shows that module has been done. So, and then you're gonna get either a 3 or a -5 for your FIPS in the SC domain, and you're gonna have a problem. Which, by the way, you can poem that one, which is interesting.
Yes, you can.
I think it's one of the only 3 or 5s that you can poem.
That's correct.
So that's why if you could just remove FIPS, a lot of these other vendors that are on the sidelines can now come back into the game because you don't require that. You could set standards for what encryption type you want to have and those types of things. In fact, the DOW has pushed encryption standards because of the quantum computer and the concerns they have about how fast it'll be able to break those encryptions. So I think they need to peel back some of this so that vendors can be more innovative.
Yeah.
And how fast to be able to fight that quantum encryption if they have to force them to go through this whole validation process and fight quantum. Those two things just won't work. They can't move fast enough.
Yeah. Another thing that you pointed out, which brings us to another point that we made, is POAMs. To allow for POAMs of select 3-pointer and 5-pointer controls.
Right.
And not just only 1-pointers. And obviously, please, for the love of God, don't let them poem their SSP control.
312.4.
312.4.
Poem that sucker. Good luck with that.
I mean, get them out of here if they don't have that. We have said this so many times, so I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but give some grace in those assessment processes for companies, and it will make it a lot smoother for us to go through, especially as somebody who is an implementer for clients that are going through this. It's terrifying to try to think about going into something and being perfect.
Yeah.
And I think any MSP can share that there's nothing about an MSP that's absolutely perfect. There's nothing about any company that's perfect. If you go digging enough, you're going to find something, So if you just give some grace and opportunity to work on it. And again, I'm not saying remove the 180 days. I'm not saying remove the requirements to remediate, that people still should remediate. But just it's not a one and done, go through phase 2 and lose, know?
And that is so important. Some people are like, oh, so you're just wanting to lower so you don't have to work as hard and you don't have to. No, that's not. Don't hear what we're not saying.
Yeah.
What we're saying is think about the Olympics skating. And in order for you to actually officially participate in the Olympics, you have to have a perfect routine. And you have all the judges up there with their own perspectives and opinions. And you see how wildly they vary when they just do the Olympics routine, right?
Yeah.
But now let's go to security and assessments. And let's say now you have 2 assessors that are going to look at all 320 assessment objectives. And then you have the OSC that has gone through their preparation. And somehow you think they're all going to agree on what perfect score looks like because there's a minimum bar and we're going to agree. You can look at the Olympic scoring and know that ain't the case. They're all looking at the same freaking routine and they're like 8, 9, 10. You're like,
numbers.
How do you have, these are all professionals that have been in the industry for many, many years, vastly different opinions. It's the same way in the assessment. Every assessment I've seen has done that. So it's not that we want to lower the standard. We just want to accommodate for the human factor that comes in and punches you directly in the face every time you get assessed. This person is the ardent believer in change management, and if you've not followed some specific things, they are going to fail you and there's nothing you can do about it. That gives you the grace to work through it. This other one believes in POAM processes and you didn't go through the right risk review process. They're going to smoke you on it. So then you got to go through and, go through. It just gives you that grace that even when you run into that variance between the assessors, you have a chance to get through it and pass and make the adjustments that make them happy and then move on. And maybe you didn't like that guy or gal. So then you go with a different C3PO to get those poems addressed and to somebody that's a little bit more reasonable about it. And you at least have the ability to move forward and get evaluated and assessed.
Yeah.
It's just sane. It's just sane.
I think it's sane. And I think it also builds companies up more than tears them down. It says, hey, these are the things that you need to do that were not met, but you've got this, go forth, fix them, and come back. And not fail, done, the end, come back and pay the whole thing over again if you want to come back. And it's
think about
that's
the cost.
Crazy.
If I have to make a system during the assessment that must be perfect, the amount of validation processes that we have in place every time we go through a client, and dadgummit, we're human, just like the client is, and we're effectively trying to expunge the humanity out of that information system.
Constantly.
There's no way around it. You are trying your absolute best to push the human factor out as a managed service provider, getting clients ready, which is extremely hard. It puts a lot of tremendous pressure on us to try to be absolutely perfect.
And you also cut off our arm tools.
Yeah,
too. We also don't even have the tools that we used to have.
Freaking nuts. And I think if they were able to address that better, it's not that we wouldn't do the validate. It's just we know the stress level and our validation tests are here. We know that we're going to easily hit that, 90% that we're trying to hit to 98 to be able to get there. When you want to try to get to that 100% part, really what it comes down to, and this is what I do when I teach the CCP course, because for those of you who may not know, I'm a CCI. I go through and teach it. Love it. It's something that I just love doing. But one of the things that I talk about in the course is that you're validating information system. You're not validating that no humans are involved. So you have to, what you're trying to do is validate that the information system has it. Maybe during the process, I might discover something that is not happening correctly. But if there is a process to check and catch that down the road, to me, that makes me feel a lot better that you have an information system that's mature enough, which is, I believe, at the heart of what Dr. Ross is trying to get at. You need to have an information system that isn't perfect, but has the capabilities of self-correcting. That's what you're trying to validate and pass, not a perfect system. But so many assessors look at it out of fear that if they get assessed, that they see anything that's imperfect, that therefore they need to fail them. That's not true. You just need to validate the information system is capable of performing the task.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah. You've got to be able to do that. And that's sane, right? Look at vulnerability management. So you're saying that there should be no system
Absolutely
that has...
none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those that no system should ever deviate from of your configuration settings or whatever. If you got 1,000 computers, I would not bet my life that 10% of those have deviated from you. You've got to know that they are. That's got to be that's life. That's reality. And you're saying that
that's how the world works.
That you find anything that is boom fail. That's crazy talk. It's just not sane.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on a soapbox there. I apologize.
I think that's a great perspective though. And I don't think that, I feel like every assessor needs to hear what you just said, because it's just the punch in the face of sane reality of thinking just as a business. So another thing, speaking of assessors that we put on here, is reducing the required number of assessors for C3PAOs. So in a perspective, for people that are not aware, there's going to be 3. There's going to be a lead CCA and 2. One of them is going to be a quality assurance person, but they all have to be CCAs. And that's a pretty big money stamp. Like what I was sharing before, they're not cheap. So to have 3 of them, that's a lot. Why would we have 3 CCAs on Lockheed Martin's assessment and 3 in Joe's Bolts,
right?
A 20-person company in Illinois.
Seems extreme.
That seems pretty extreme. I feel like you could get away with having one person do most of the assessment if it was a sane assessment. That goes back to kind of what Bobby was saying, is sometimes you get a little bit wild. So you kind of have to take these things hand in hand with what we're saying. But also, there still needs to be a quality assurance person that can come in and validate certain things and be able to spot check. But I don't think that the entire assessment, there needs to be 2-3 people watching the entire time. And maybe that could shrink the cost. I've talked to C3PAOs. They also agree that it would shrink their cost if they didn't have to pay for that many people to be on it the whole time. So if that was a possibility, Miss Davies, that would be a great cost reduction that you could do, I think, within these.
Yeah, for the assessment.
I think that'd be great.
History lesson here, a lot of the C3PAOs had already been C3PAOs before 32 CFR had officially been put in the Code of Federal Regulation, like the final version. So these organizations stepped out in faith to become C3PAOs at great cost to their own selves to do it. And they had not seen the final ruling, and they got burned. How did they get burned? They got burned because they didn't know they were going to require 3 people when they did it, right? They thought, based on the way that the CCP and CCA courses were written, nobody had any of that information that was coming.
No.
They just assumed one CCA, a lead, would be running it, and the rest would either be, they would just have that lead do it, and maybe some CCPs that were participating at some of the lower controls and those types of things with oversight by the CCA.
That's literally how the CCP course is written.
It was written, right. And so when they created the contract, a lot of these companies had put money on the barrel and said, okay, give me a quote to get my level 2. And they did it based on that understanding.
Yeah.
And then when 32 CFR comes out, Guess what quote was inaccurate then? All of the C3PO quotes that they had provided to these organizations that had lined up. And remember, we had this big rush of organizations that came through and got certified, and then it went silent. Because what happened is you kind of had the doors waiting to open, right?
Everybody was there.
Everybody's there waiting in line. And then once the rush gets through, then it's like, okay, who's coming? Well, there wasn't a lot of the organizations were just kind of sitting back going, what's going to happen? And now they're kind of coming in and trickling in.
Well, now they're actually implementing this 800.
Right, now they're actually doing
so it's going to take them about a year to catch up.
Yeah.
So give them some time.
So you're going to see a ramp up that starts to happen. And what do we do just as it's starting to happen? We hit the pause. And you're just like, oh my gosh, seriously.
I mean, it's pretty wild. I will say at the very end of this RFI that I was putting in, I did share the perspective that Bobby just shared right now about the effect that this pause, if it continues past this 60-day, will affect the ecosystem with C3PAOs and the uncertainty of that. And the crap in what C3PAOs have been drugged through already, is just insane. And so for them to still be running and doing these things, pretty admirable in my opinion. And so to keep this pause going to really affect them even more is absolutely insane to me. So I would only keep it going if you really, really necessary, had to, because of something you were trying to implement, but I don't see anything being worth that. So, I mean, at least keep it going as it is. And then, if you need to remediate some things based upon the information that you get from the RFIs, then that's great. But I did share that perspective.
Yeah, because even if they decide that they want to continue some different things, make it very clear that the C3POs need to be there, what their purpose is. Because, they're starting to lose heart. People are canceling. I've talked to many people that have run into situations where chunks of their schedule is starting to open up because people are just canceling their assessments because they're trying to read the tea leaves and go, well, maybe I can save this $30,000 or $40,000 for my assessment. I'm going to wait and see. And the longer that gap happens, the more C3POs that maybe weren't as healthy because they're getting off the feet. Because if you think about it, those CCAs and CCPs are very expensive. Nobody's really using CCPs. Everybody's going straight to the CCAs because that's the way the 32 CFR was written. Yeah. And so because of that, those C3Os have to pay top dollar for those people to sit in those assessments. And so some of these C3Os had invested to try to ramp up. So they hired or grew their teams because they're trying to deal with the demand that they know is coming and have been happening. We've talked with organizations, C3POs that are doing 50, 75 assessments in a month.
Yeah.
They're having multiple assessment teams with multiple assessments happening throughout the week. If all of a sudden 50% of those go away over the course of 3 or 4 months, what are they going to have to do?
Right.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going to happen. We're talking about layoffs, right? People are going to have to give the teams they spent so much hard work building up, they're going to have to start tearing down.
Right.
And that you can't be doing donuts in the backyard when you're trying to figure out how you're going to get to your destination. Yes. It's not great. So I hope to God that they do not tarry on moving that forward.
Yeah.
That could be really bad.
Yeah. The last thing, the improvement and recommendation that we were giving is actually something that makes life harder for us in some ways. But if you look at it in different ways, it actually makes it a little bit easier, which is something that we've been preaching for a long time. In the MSP collective that we're a part of, MSPs for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure, that's a part of a bunch of ESPs that are CMMC Level 2 certified. We are all rallying for this type of perspective, and we really hope that it will happen, which is establishing a dedicated assessment pathway for external service providers specifically. What does that mean? That means allowing certified providers to pass more security inheritance or compliance inheritance to their clients, significantly reducing the cost on their clients' assessments and readiness. And I think this just makes sense because when you're going through and you're using a proven process that an external service provider has used time and time again and has been assessed on time and time again, there has got to be a way to assess these, these things and the way that you put in these requirements and these controls and these assessment objectives, and that the services that you provide and the infrastructure that you provide, there's got to be a way to assess these things that, yes, it might be a harder assessment on us, but that's what we're taking so that we don't have to go through 500 assessments with clients every year trying to go through the same old, when we're just doing the same thing for many of the, assessment objectives.
I agree. What Kaleigh is talking about, y'all, please pay attention to what she's saying. It is so critical. And I think if we can get this, and we can get this done the right way, it could greatly expedite and make the cost cheaper and the assessments much faster all the way around. It could just be a big shot in the arm for the industry and its maturity.
Yeah.
So let's say that you're OSC that needs to get assessed, and you're a 20-person company. You're not that large. You don't have the knowledge to do it. So you hire a managed service provider like us to do it for you. Okay. We step in, we build your container for you because maybe you're going to grow. You don't want to have like a pre-built out of the box kind of system that you're renting space from them. You want to have the ability to grow. You want to have an infrastructure system that you think you're going to start winning bids, and you want to be able to just grow it. So you come to us, right? And we build the tenant for you, but we build it, right, as an enclave for you that's in the cloud. Right? So just a fully cloud one. Let's say you do VDI, whatever. So it's a very simple, basic to understand system to be assessed. The assessor is going to come in and they're going to look at all 320 assessment objectives. And since it's a VDI, a good chunk is going to fall on us, and we're going to have to build it the same way we've always built all of them in the past. And it might be the same C3PO that's assessed it. That, hey, Bob, it was great talking to you last week. Here we go again. And here's the same enclave, same system, same SSP style. And they're like, yeah, it's good to know. And then they go through and they still have to check all 320. Nothing gets shortcutted. They're going to go through it. And they're like, yep. I mean, part of it, if they've seen you before, they understand it. So you shortcut the understanding process, but they still have to go through the validation process because they can't. There's no shortcut process for that. So it doesn't matter that we're responsible for setting up their SIM tool or their antivirus or defining or controlling their VDIs, managing their DLP processes. It doesn't matter that we're level 2. They still check that client's configuration because we're managing for them. Now, that means all 320 have to be assessed. It's probably going to take a day to 2 days for that process to go through. If the C3POs are really efficient at what they do, it could probably be done a day and a half. It could be pretty quick. Assuming the MSP has their stuff together, they have all the documentation, all the screenshots and information all lined up. You just got to go through and check through, go through and do the appropriate validations, show me the intro, show me the other pieces. If you know what you're doing, you can be very efficient with it. Okay. Still costs money. Still takes time. A lot of validations. There's a human factor that's involved that you have to go through, that they've got to check through and validate all that. Now, let's pretend that we have what Kaleigh's talking about. What would that look like? The MSP would be validated and checked for the processes that they have and the maturity that they go through. Now, I think it's like 7,020, I think, is what the C3POs have to go through for their certification validation process, if I remember correctly.
You're talking about ISO?
ISO, right. Yeah, they have to go through and validate their processes. What if they did that for us, right? They validated our processes because, remember, as an MSP, we're going to provide really 2 different things to the client. We might provide an infrastructure that we host for them. I'm not talking about a whole container. I'm talking about we might provide AV for them. We might provide different pieces for them that we might host ourselves, like our RMM tool, things like that. We might host those and then send them over to the client. Maybe it was in our assessment we got assessed. But so there might be some infrastructure pieces that we provide to the client. But in general, most of it is going to be services provided, right? So the services that we provide to the client, we might not have a mature process, and we might do it right for one and wrong for the other. So that's why during the assessment, they check them all. But if they had a way to validate that the MSP had mature processes in place to do it consistently across all of them, then this is how the assessment would work. They would say, oh, Bobby, we're going to do an enclave? Yes. Okay. show me your shared responsibility matrix and how you guys got validated in your test. Yes, here's what it is. Okay, the matrix lines up with what we validated against there. Okay, that's fine. The only thing left is personnel screening, background check processes, some other training components. Now, you shrank the validation assessment process down to like just practically 2 domains, a very small subset. And you could do that in half a day, right? I mean, like super fast. And then you're leaning on the assessment process that happened for the MSP. So now that assessment could be done in a fraction of the time, and you still have that confidence level because you're leaning on the MSP that got the certification, that got the validation to do their job. If they don't, then they've got a problem, right? That they have to go through and address. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, I think this could be done, and this would then make the process so much easier. And I think you would get more MSPs that want to step into the space that would want to do it because there's a validation process that they go through that they know they have it right. And they can then go ahead and continue to support those clients. And the clients' assessment processes will go considerably faster. But you have to think about it. There's various kind of different configurations that they're going to have to be able to check. What about a complete cloud? What about a hybrid? And what about physical? So there would have to be some time, the thought process to examine how that's going to happen. But it can be done. It absolutely could be done.
It absolutely can. Yeah. Yeah. I really hope that is in our near future. We've talked with people like even on the councils of Cyber AB that have been like lobbying for that perspective as well. So I really do hope that will be in our future. You know what else I just thought? Pretty sure the new cap is done. Not sure what they're going to do with that now.
Yeah, I mean we talked with some of the people. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say who has been working on it because I'm not 100% sure who has, but we're talking with different people, and some of the people who had been involved, like they were well deep into getting that cap redone. I'm sure all that's just been sort of people like, well, what now?
Yeah.
They're just kind of looking around going, well, I guess we'll wait to see what happens before we finish the cap. I don't know. Maybe the Cyber AB has the new cap because we were at CMMC Midwest and a lot of people were talking about it coming in for the landing, the new cap.
Yeah.
And I think Matt Travis had talked about the fact that they were working on it. And he'd had an independent panel do it to kind of hand over to them for them to then kind of find it. So, I mean, there's a long history of the DoD and the Cyber AB leaning on volunteer work in organizations. You can think that's good or bad, whatever, but that there's a long history of a lot of hard sweat and tears that have been put in by a lot of really good people that have poured into this of their own time to help try to move this industry forward because it's so badly needed.
Yeah.
And I think that cap rewrite is a perfect example of that.
Right. I agree. Well, again, guys, I hope that this gave you some perspective and just us being, transparent and trying to share what our thoughts were and what we gave for information, and encouraging you guys to do the same. Unless it contradicts what we said, then don't send yours in. I'm just kidding. Could you imagine?
That's great.
That's good. And so I just really encourage you guys, especially small businesses that are like doing this thing that are trying to figure out how to do it and getting your perspective, but also MSPs. Like, there's not a lot of us there. There's not a lot of us there. So
if you're an MSP, you're listening to this podcast and you want a copy of what we have submitted, let us know. We'll send it to you. And rewrite your own. Send it to your clients.
Yeah.
Get them involved in this process. Start submitting theirs. We need to get this information. Look at it. If you want to put your own, hey, mi casa, su casa. Let us know. We will be happy to give that information to you because we really need more people to participate and push into this space and share their perspectives. Talk with your congressmen and senators and other representatives. Say what's going on. Here's some talking points. You can look at ours. You can look through the RFIs. If hopefully we can find the link where you can search through them. And there might be some other good points that you want to create your own points. Send it to your clients. If you're an OSC, if you're an MSP working with those, send those talking points that you're going to do. Get them. Share their they might know people that know people and say, hey, look, I've spent this money and I'm mad as heck. How are you going to screw me over here? Please don't do this. to us.
Yeah.
Really, really, we need to get a swell going here, and get good information out, get some good information back, because we don't know exactly what's going through their head. It's important.
Yeah, cannot agree. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed. And please, again, comment like what Bobby said. If you'd like to receive a copy of ours, you can comment down below, and we'll catch you and send it over your way. And then also, please make sure to subscribe so that you're notified anytime we post new content. Every Thursday, we're posting new content. So stay tuned. We hope you guys enjoyed this podcast today. But as always, again, remember to keep on climbing. We'll see ya. Bye.